Welcome, everyone. On behalf of REBA, thank you for joining this breakout session. My name is Jake Atfield. I'm Head of Strategy at Fair for All Finance. We're a national charity focused on reducing financial exclusion through better provision of products and services to vulnerable people. It's great to be back at REBA, and we've got some superb sessions in this room all about financial wellbeing, which is something very close to my heart, Sarah's, and I'm sure lots of people in this room as well. Before I hand over to Sarah, though, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, if you could download the Slido app. Couple of reasons. Firstly, Sarah's got some polls that she'd like your input on to help us develop further the work at Wealth at Work. You can also ask questions through the app, and also at the end, we really like all of the attendees to rate each session to help us to improve the conferences going forward as well. There aren't any fire alarms, so you can just sit back and relax and enjoy listening to Sarah and her presentation from Wealth at Work.
Thank you very much, Jake. So thank you so much for attending today. So as you can see, I have got the Peats of the Action on screen now. So please come along and grab one to take home. My little boy, I stayed in London last night because I live up in Harrogate, and I had a call with him last night at about 9 o'clock, and he was, "Mummy, how much tat are you going to bring me back?" But seriously, this is quality tat, and trust me, I go around everywhere to. But anyway, but I'm sure there's lots of other wonderful things that that you can all take home. But when we're away from family, it's quite nice to kind of be able to take home some things to explain what we're talking about. So hopefully you're in the right room. So this is what I'm going to be speaking about for 20 minutes, Jake, and I promise I won't go over. I usually do, but I'll be good today. So if you're not in the right room, please move now. So have you all got your Slido ready? So we are very proud to work with REBA, and we produce the research every year in partnership with REBA. And the research reaches over 1.3 million employees. So in terms of, you know, the kind of power of that research, I think it's really important to see the trends that are happening and, you know, understanding within our workforces what challenges people have and how we can address that. So in the poll, you should see a question, and if this isn't working, then I'm going to have to resort to old school putting your hands up. Can you see the poll? Yeah, okay, good. We've got nods and I've got thumbs up. That's what I need. So have you read the latest REBA research? And I'm looking at our tech. Are there answers coming in? Yeah, perfect. Is it going to be real time? This is quite cool. Okay, wow. Okay, so it's on the to-do list. So if you would like a copy of the research, please come to stand 22. We can scan your barcode and we can send you an electronic copy of the REBA research. I quite like a paper copy, which we can also send you, because when I'm travelling so much on the train, it's quite nice to kind of read it and absorb. But if you would like an electronic copy, then please come and see us, and we're more than happy to send you that. And if you, haven't seen it, please come and see us. So number 2. Is... So this was last year. Who was here last year? Yeah, perfect. Who met Claudia Winkleman? Yeah, wasn't that cool? Yeah, I met her at the coffee machine, which was, she was very, very cool. So have you done anything different? Okay, wow. So just before we move on, those of you who have said yes, what have you done different? Is there anybody that's happy to share? This is a comfortable place. Anybody? Yes?
I work in the civil service, so we've got lots of government departments, so we share sort of showcasing best practice.
Brilliant.
Loads of share and learn, so other departments.
Awesome. Yeah, that's brilliant. Share and learn, and actually that ties in really nicely with what I'm going to be talking about, so that's perfect. Anybody else? I think a few people. Yeah, Ant?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work around implementing payroll-based savings, loans, ISAs, all that sort of stuff, and particularly focusing on helping people save money because the cost of living crisis is still ongoing.
Absolutely, yeah. These two couldn't have been better. Perfectly ties in with what we're going to be talking about today. And it's great to see that people have got it on the to-do list. So, next question. So that to-do list, so those of you that perhaps some of this is still on the to-do list, can you please just put in perhaps what's on that to-do list? I think that's really interesting to sort of see what is on that list. This is a great thing about these sessions, isn't it? You can kind of make them interactive without having to... Perfect, yeah, more research, absolutely. Pensions, yeah, lots of changes coming with pensions. Mortgages, absolutely. Education, superb. Financial coaching, love that. Yeah, helping more colleagues improve their financial well-being. There's a lot on here which is everything that you're going to get from today, isn't it? Payroll-linked savings, absolutely, that ties in with the research. Perfect. Just wait, there's a couple of people still typing. And actually the case study is going to tie in really nicely to a lot of the points here. Payroll-linked savings. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? When I joined Wealth at Work, we have a salary deducted ISA, and it comes clearly out of your salary every month. And it's just one of those things that for those rainy days or for when something unexpected happens, you've actually got that buffer, which is really important. Perfect. Okay, and apart from visiting our stand. So, let's have a look, because I know that everybody in the room really likes their research from the REBA research that I talked about. So why does all of this matter? Well, it matters to all of us in the room. 1 in 3 employees say that money worries affect their work. So therefore, that has a lot of knock-on effects as well. And, you know, personally, I think, you know, it's one of those things that I know we don't talk about at work, you know, money and our pensions, retirement, all of those things we don't really tend to talk about. And there's a lot of research that shows we talk about our relationships way more than we do about our money. And cost of living, although, you know, for some of us in the room, that may not be applicable, but certainly with the amount of sessions that we run here at Wealth at Work for people, cost of living absolutely is still really affecting a lot of our colleagues and perhaps ourselves as well. You know, looking at, you know, increases in terms of costs, etc. Therefore, this is really important. And for those of you who know, Joanna Lumley is here today, later on this afternoon. So there is a little bit of a theme within my slides about absolutely fabulous. So what financial concerns have our employees got? So we talked about the research representing 1.3 million employees. So 42% are worried about not having enough savings for unexpected costs. So, you know, if the car breaks down, if the washer breaks, you know, things like that actually are a really, really large cost. 37% not being able to save enough for the future. So that ties in with that whole retirement piece as well. Paying basic costs. So as we know, you know, when you look at a budget planner, for example, you know, your rent or your mortgage is that top priority. And those costs are really significantly rising for people. And 29% are worried about being in debt. Clearly, you know, debt is one of those issues that, again, people perhaps, keep to themselves, they don't want to share. But that's also not just about the individual, it's about perhaps that family unit, their partner, etc. So, I think that we're seeing a lot more people wanting to have support, not just for themselves, but also for their family unit. So how are employees responding? Well, as you'd imagine, you've got a lot of employees who are working more overtime. They're perhaps borrowing from mum and dad, etc. Perhaps some of your graduates just joining, they might have student debts to still pay off, so they may be borrowing money from friends and family. We hope that they're not going to places like loan sharks, etc. And 18% have taken on debt, and people are taking an additional job. So these points, really do matter in terms of how our people are responding to those issues. As you can imagine, and today is a great day, and we've got some amazing sessions for the rest of the day, and I've kind of looked at the content of those, and I think you'll see a lot of people talking about that link between people's financial well-being, resilience, etc., and the impact on people's stress levels. We know that there is a very direct link between being able to manage your money and feeling much less stressed. I'm sure some of you in the room will hopefully, again agree that if we have control on our finances, then we are much better able to cope. But it also kind of leads into our physical life as well, and that whole concentration. If we're worried about paying our bills, we're not perhaps able to focus as well at work, etc. So the interesting thing here is around workplace support. So 61% feel supported to understand their finances, yet only 13% actually would ask for help from their employer. And I think it's that thing sometimes when you're in work, you almost want somebody who's impartial, because sometimes, how many in the room have got an EAP? Yeah. Do you feel that there's scepticism over that? Is it well used? No? Yeah. Okay. And I think, that's that element where people think of an employee assistance programme as, I'm in crisis. Do I actually go through to the EAP? But actually they can provide some great, help when people need it. But again, it's that scepticism within the workplace. So just with that Joanna Lumley thing, I was kind of trying to think about some of the companies that we're working with. And some of the companies, are really focusing on real concerns from employees. I don't know how many of you use sort of storytelling. That's definitely a really great way, showing if people are happy to share, then actually sometimes that is far more powerful if a colleague is actually saying, what their concerns are and what they did and what the outcome was. Access to education and one-to-one, we've talked about that because, it's not just that individual, it's their family members, etc. And those behavioural nudges, definitely. So what does the future look like? So through the research, it shows if people had spare cash, what would they spend it on? So interestingly, 42% would say that they would save any spare cash for that rainy day. So for example, the ISA, so we talked about that payroll deducted savings, and Ant, you talked about that as well. And I think, if we can encourage people to do all the great behaviours, such as a budget planner, etc., understanding if people have actually got any spare cash, then where does that go? And if it can come out of salary, then actually that's great in a way, because it's one of those ways of saving where it kind of comes out before it goes into your bank account, so you're not spending it. Paying off debt, definitely. So for those graduates that are perhaps, they've got a student loan where they're paying, incredible interest rates, over 30%, which, some of us, that is quite hard to comprehend. But, would they be better paying off more of their student loan, for example, than doing something else? So again, this is really important. So what I thought I'd do was just share with you a case study from Serco. Unfortunately, Serco couldn't be here today, but they have just recently won an award for their communications around their share save plan. So in the room, how many companies represented here today do you offer share plans, just to get a feel? Okay, great. So there's, about 50%, so that's really good. And if you don't have a share plan, don't worry, this is still totally relevant, because what Serco did was they've got a very, very diverse workforce. And actually they've got 20% of their employees, and you can see the number of employees here on the screen, who are actually over retirement age. So when we started talking with Serco, they were wanting to try and increase the take-up on My Share Save. So for those of you who know about Share Save, it's with Serco, it's a 3-year plan. You choose a set amount between £5 and £500 a month. You can purchase shares in 3 years' time at a discounted option price. It's probably the only job where I can stand up and say, you really can't lose. Yeah. So the challenge for companies is trying to get that message across without kind of saying that. So what the objective was, and I think that's really key with any program that you're running, is setting very clear objectives. What are you looking to achieve? So what Serco were looking to achieve was an increase in take-up from 5.4% to over 20% take-up across their workforce. So for those of you who have perhaps had your bins emptied this week, or you've been into hospital, you may well have come across a Serco employee. But for Serco colleagues, they don't always recognise that they actually work for Serco. So, that's a challenge in itself. So a lot of their employees are on the minimum wage. A lot are impacted, as we all talked about at the start, by cost of living, and we talked about that high number into retirement. So what Serco did, which we're seeing more and more companies, anybody in the room have you done focus groups for any of your financial well-being? Have you gone out to people? Have you done surveys, that kind of thing? Yeah, a couple. Okay. I think personally focus groups are fantastic. Having been within Serco and other companies where they've done surveys, I think the insight that you get and the honesty. So we were in a room with not just the share plan people, but we had the pensions, we had HR, and one of the areas that we really wanted to engage with were unions. Anybody got any unions? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so there was definitely a disconnect between the unions and Serco, because the unions didn't understand how these plans worked. So having the unions represented in the room was a huge, huge win in terms of explaining how this plan works. And once you saw that light bulb moment, which I love, when people are like, so why wouldn't Serco employees join? It's that moment, and I've been in share plans and financial wellbeing over 30 years, and so I love anything like this. So this is why I'm sharing this with you today. So the there was and I mentioned at the start about over 20% of Serco workforce being over retirement age. So we were getting a lot of pushback from the pension team saying, okay, but if I've got Joe or Sally who are coming up to retirement, why would they join my share save? So when I listened to that question, why wouldn't they join? Because it should form part of their retirement plan. Because a share save, when you look at the rules of the plan, and this was where those light bulb moments were going, it is a 3-year plan. But if you leave for the reasons of retirement, you've got 6 months in which you can carry on saving, and you can still benefit from that discounted option price. So therefore, it should 100% form part of your retirement planning. And that was when suddenly people were, and graduates, well, why would I join? I'm here at Serco for a couple of years. Why would I want to join ShareSave? Why wouldn't you? Because as we know, hopefully graduates, that's the start of their career. And therefore, they may well stay with Serco long after that 2 years that they can just kind of see. And, getting people involved in your savings plans right at the start of their career, what could be better? So again, seeing the challenges coming over, but actually, having that discussion round a table. And we did these on site, which I know you might be kind of thinking, that's a little bit old school. We did 2 on site, but we also did a couple that were online as well for those people that couldn't join. But it's just, getting that insight from your colleagues can be really, really valuable. And when it comes to financial well-being and that broader well-being, sometimes when you're in a room with people and you're sharing the intranet site that you perhaps have, and I'm sure you're paying a lot of money for some of the benefits platforms that you have and some of the great benefits that you offer. But actually, when you get people together and you see people going, I didn't know that was there, and I didn't know that was there, and I didn't know how I joined that. And that's where, you're really going to make a massive difference. And it's not just about the focus groups, don't get me wrong. It's about that communication, the engagement. Some of you today are going to love attending sessions with lots of visuals. You're going to love some of the videos. Some of you are going to really like some of the music that's playing, because we all have different learning styles. And I always harp on about different learning styles, but it is so important to get that engagement. So what Serco did, through the focus groups, they were able to put a paper to the board to agree to revamp their communications, but not only that, to include financial education and that one-to-one guidance, because people, as we said at the start, want in some ways to talk to people about their money. So what did we do? We did 20 live webinars in the UK and also overseas. Let's not forget, when we're a global company, who's a global company in the room? Yeah, perfect. So, you're probably wanting to do something that is applicable for all colleagues. So recorded versions, but you don't have to have the GDPR issues if you record a blank session. We all don't want to get caught by that one, that people can watch in their own time. And for Serco, again, that was really important. And the one-to-one coaches. But the other element, which I know in all the sessions later today, you're going to hear more about, which is data. Data is absolutely key. Again, looking at the benefits that I'm sure that you all have in place, are you working with your provider to get the data? What does that insight show you? So here, we could see straight away from the sessions that we ran where people's knowledge was before they attended the session, and then where their knowledge was after the session. And the other important thing here was 4.66, and you might be thinking, what is this out of? So hopefully you've seen at the bottom, these are not out of 10, because you might be going, oh, that's quite low. These are out of 5. And it's really easy for people to complete this at the end of the session. So again, you can share this data with colleagues to kind of show them what people got from the education. Not only quantitative data, the numbers are great. For those of you in the room who love your numbers, that's fantastic. But for me, what people actually say about attending the session and what they've done following it is super important, because let's be honest, it's about education and enablement and what were the results. But the results are kind of, this to me is far more powerful. In Australia, US and Canada, just to kind of get that global view is superb. And in terms of other impacts, an increase in take-up, as you saw at the start, that target for Serco was 20%, they achieved 45%. But some of those real nuggets were having that union support, absolutely, 100%. And it's just the start for Serco. And this was what the judges said in terms of the award that Serco received. And I think I would mirror their comments here. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed that. And I was bang on time.
You were bang on time. Congratulations. Can we have a round of applause for Sarah, please?